what it does. Hey, y'all. Happy Sunday. I have a guest with me today. As you know, we've been talking about this for some time. So I am going to play the quick intro and then we will hop into what we're going to be discussing today. This is kind of another call to action. We need some assistance from you guys. So we will get into it and discuss all of the things. And I will introduce our guest today in just a moment. Ta-da! That's what I always think every time it ends. I'm like, ta-da! Not like the thing where we pop out. Ta-da! Oh, here we go. Hey, y'all, coming in. Hey, Cash. Hey, accounting by day, Christina. Okay, y'all, this is Chapt that is with me today. Chapt ass, but you guys can call her Chapt. Whichever you prefer. Whatever you prefer. If your ass is chapped, you can call her that. But I'm opening this in like a lighthearted way because this is going to be a very heavy discussion, a very heavy topic. So please understand if you need to take a break, please feel free to leave at any point in time. Questions, if you have questions as we discuss this, please let us know. Any questions you have, nothing's off the table. Just please be respectful and understand that this is a real heavy story that Chapt has lived with for over 30 years. And she will be walking us through some of what's going on and what we can help with assisting on this with. Hey, Britt. Hey, Woodrick. So please be mindful of that. For replay viewers, please drop your questions below. We will get to them. So with that said, this is our lovely guest today. Her name, like I said, is Tass. Chapt is going to tell us about her story and her words. So Chapt, where would you like to start? Do you want to talk about where we are today and kind of give a little bit of the background and our call to action? Oh, one more thing too. The link that you see pinned, sorry, Dexter is going to be a pain in the butt. The link that you see pinned is their Facebook group. It is ran by the victim. This has got a group of a lot of information on this offender and other calls to action. So please feel free to join the Facebook group if you are on Facebook. That is the link pinned. It is also in the description. Mods, you can drop that as we go if you would like to. And Chapt, where would you like to start?
Well, as of today, I have a parole hearing coming up on April 16th. That's going to be a big day for all of the Islanders. Keep it in your head and send out good vibes, not just to me, but to Amethyst as well. Please. It's going to be a big day for you guys. For us, well, for me, it's 1 out of every 8 months that I've been going through for the last 4.5 years. Every 8 months, I have to submit to a parole hearing for this guy. It's one of the moments in every year that make me cringe. I have to take off work. I have to inform my work of what's going on and why, which was really difficult the first few times, to say the least, to have everybody. I work in a male-dominated field. I'm actually top of the bottom rung, if you will. So I do have some people that need to respect me, and that makes it pretty difficult when they know every shitty detail of why you're gone that day. Needless to say, my time is coming again. I go into these things thinking the best, going in prepared for the worst. And I have been very fortunate that the board members have always denied him a full parole hearing, except for once. And that once, my life fell apart for several months until we got to the full parole hearing. And then, gratefully, they all said no. But it's just one of the ways that, at least through the South Dakota justice system, victims are continually re-victimized every 8 months after a certain point of their time has been served.
It's a way of re-victimizing the victims constantly. And this initial crime happened in the 90s, 1992?
1992, January 4th. I had been on my own for a couple of years. I was young, I was 17. I had just bought my very first car from a dealership that was only a year old. I was showing it off to some friends. Some friends were in town. It was late. We were young. We were enjoying our time. I stopped by a 7-Eleven to grab a couple of sodas before I went home. And it was 4 blocks from my apartment. And when I got out of my vehicle, this guy asked me for a ride. I said no. I went inside. I went to get a couple of drinks. I talked to the clerk just a little bit. She actually became a very integral part of my case later. But I walked back out to my vehicle. He said, please, I just live, blah, blah, blah. It was only about a quarter of a mile away. I knew right where it was. I said, show me your driver's license. Thinking, if somebody's not going to be that stupid. I was wrong. This guy was that stupid. I remembered the name. I remembered the address. And I remembered the picture. I was going, he ended up taking me out of town. He ripped the keys out of my hands. There was a struggle. I was out there 2.5 hours in a place I did not know where I was. He tried to get in and shove me out of the car, tried to get in and drive off. He could not. It was a 5-speed manual. He couldn't drive it. To this day, several people involved in my case are convinced that that is what saved me. Is he had to keep me there because I had to drive, or he would be stuck out there too. So I drove him back into town, and then dropped him off where he asked, which was right behind the courthouse. And if you know anything about Sioux Falls in the 90s, right behind the courthouse was a club, and on the other side of that was an adult store. He started walking off in that direction, and I drove, I don't know, I think it was like 25, 30 blocks down a main road. And as soon as I saw a cop, I pulled into his lane, flipped my lights at him. He later told me he wasn't sure, but he thought he had a drunk or a druggie until he got to my car. And then he said it was obvious by the things he could see in the car and by my face that this was something serious. I believe I told him to, you go get that fucker, I'll drive myself to the hospital.
Yes, you did. She's quoted in newspaper articles saying this very thing to the cops. You go get him. I'll drive myself to the hospital.
He, of course, denied my request. He said, I've got other people looking for him. Where did he go? It only took them about 20 minutes to locate him because I was literally just laying down on a gurney in the ER when they found him. And that's the basics of my story. He was subsequently not only arrested, but convicted in Minnehaha County and given 100 years because of some of the details of my rape and the fact that he was a habitual offender.
Yes.
At the trial, I actually found out he had actually been arrested twice that night before running into me and been bonded out, allowed to bond out.
Another one that was on bond during the time of the crime.
Correct.
Yeah.
The trial was successful. I thought I was moving on with my life. I had always had it in my head that I was not going to live a life of shame and regret, and that if I could help somebody else who could prevent this from happening to them because they grew up in a small town and trusted everybody, or they'd already been through something horrific, I wanted them to know you don't have to feel the shame that you do. I went public. I had an incredibly wonderful victim-centered advocate within the media.
Yes.
And he was amazing from the start. He owns my story. But I did go public. I have subsequently done follow-up stories with the Argus leader over the years for many reasons. But for about 3.5 years, I was front page center newspaper and TV and radio because within 7 months of getting convicted, he escaped.
Can we talk a little bit about that too? Because it wasn't, yes. He was furloughed to go to a funeral, if I'm correct.
That's correct. Yep. And it was in Rapid City area. And they sent some rookies with him. And he actually escaped on a bathroom break.
Yeah.
He literally went out a window and escaped. And he was on the run for just over 2 years. They recaptured him in Denver, Colorado. Those 2 years, I actually packed everything I could into the back of my pickup. And I moved out of state and started using my middle name and my stepdad's last name just to stay in hiding, because he would call the Argus leader. He would call Kelloland TV. He would call all of the places that I'd gone public through. He was calling intermittently and threatening to kill me.
Think about that for a second. Sorry to interrupt you, but think about that for the viewers, please, for a moment. Consider what she just said. And this is well documented. This story has been so well documented because he has attempted to appeal. He has written all sorts of crazy things with this court stuff. Like it's a very documented story, but in the articles, it specifically points out numerous times how over the 2 years of him on the run, he continued to torment the victims. Now, when I say victims, there is Jane Doe's, other Jane Doe's too, that are confirmed, but then there's a very big possibility that there's more than that. And he was using media to torment the victims throughout this entire time that he was on the run. And they're allowing this man to have parole hearings every 8 months. Think about this. Sorry, go ahead. I just really wanted to.
No, you jump in whenever you want. This is a free speech. Like I said, I moved out of state, went into hiding, changed my name, did a lot of things to try to keep myself safe.
Yeah.
After, like I said, it was just over 2 years. I got a call from my media friend first. And it wasn't even the district attorney's office. It wasn't the police. It was my media friend. He called me out of the blue one day, which he had been one of the few people that knew where I was, and said, they got him finally. I said, what? He said, they got him. I said, oh my gosh, I got to make some calls then, because I was actually getting ready to film for America's Most Wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I was days, literally, away from America's Most Wanted being on my doorstep to try to help find him. So I have some interesting contacts that probably most people don't. I've stayed friends with most of them. In fact, the gentleman from America's Most Wanted who was assigned to my case just reached out to me last week and wanted to know, hey, I know your hearing's getting close. How are you doing?
I'd love to do that though. I really love that they check on you.
They are amazing. I made some wonderful friends out of a really horrific situation, and I have to say that they are some of the most amazing people. They really are, and most genuine. They have always taken my calls. They have always reached out and used what connections they have to try to keep me safe and to keep this guy behind bars. So that all happened. Shortly before he was found, they overturned his conviction due to a technicality about a medical issue. And we had to go back to court within 6 months of the time of him getting recaught. So we had to go back to court. We had to reconvict him, and the new judge gave him 107 years plus 7 years for the escape. So he had a total of 114 years. This guy never should have seen the light of day. He was 39 when he raped me. He is now in his 60s. And I have to go to parole hearings every 8 months. Do you want me to share the other weird twists and turns, or do we want to just let that go?
Whatever you feel comfortable sharing, please feel free to share whatever. I mean, he and other people that support him have weaponized everything that they can possibly do to re-victimize the victims over and over again. And that is something I think really needs to be put across, because we know that there's other victims out there. Unfortunately, she was 17 when this happened. He was 39. He had victims, very young victims, which we're not going to name by name, but there is other victims of his. So there's a good possibility of other victims. And hopefully if they hear this, they can reach out to you and connect with you. But yeah, anything you want to say.
Okay. So I went to the first year and a half of parole hearings by myself. It's just me. My family is not involved. I have a son who is an adult, and he's living his life. I'm not going to drag him into it. But it's just me. And then I got a messenger request from someone I did not know, several states away. And the very first few lines were this person apologizing to me because I had to become a victim because they couldn't do what I did. And it clicked who this was. We believe that she was his first victim. He was 17, she was 7 years old. And there are several similarities between our events. Roughly a 2.5 hour, 3 hour rape, taken away from the scene of where she was. Several other issues that are benign to the story. But she now has found her voice. And I am so proud of her.
You ladies are incredibly brave.
Her and I are now a group of sisters of survival. And we now stand side by side at every hearing together. And we strategize the last couple of weeks before every hearing. Okay, this time we need to pull out pictures of who we were when he did this to us. Make it real. Make these people understand you were a child. I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
We were defenseless against this guy. And so we go into this with more of a strategic view now. But she finally got her voice heard. But from if he started when he was around 17 and he didn't quit until I got him at 39 into prison, I know there has to be other victims out there who for reasons of being scared, reasons of knowing who his family is, reasons of shame, reasons of whatever demons you're carrying. I want you to know you can come into our Facebook page and never tell me a darn thing, but you have a safe place to go and have your voice heard by someone who understands. And just to branch off on that, when this lady reached out to me after all these years and apologized, it took me probably the whole last 2 years, if not 3, to put it in her head that she doesn't have to carry that demon. I do not blame her. We are both victims of the same thing, and we both carry our own guilt and shame. She doesn't have to be responsible for anything that she could or could not do to stop him. And anyone that's dealing with that kind of pain and anguish, the victims that come after you, do not blame you. We love you like a sister of survival. And we are just excited that we don't have to walk alone anymore in this fight. We don't blame you. We all do what we can, when we can, if we can, to survive these things. And there is no shame in that. None. If you are still upright when the incident is done, you did the right thing. You did everything you could. And you need to be proud of that. So they did, over the years, let him go and speak at women's prisons about how drugs and alcohol screw up your life.
Yeah, that's
rich.
That's ironic.
When I found that out, I literally went to the old DA who prosecuted my case, who now has his own private practice. And I hunted down not only the new warden, but a few other people in the system. And I gave them an earful and a half. And I will not stop doing that, no matter how batshit crazy they may think I am. This guy is not a good guy. And I don't care what light you shine on him. He enjoys this every 8 months, getting to relive victimizing me and the other woman.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And there is articles, just so you guys are aware, for full transparency, there are articles that have tried to spin him in a decent light, that he is a model prisoner and so on and so forth. But when you know the rest of the story, it's all about the facade that it's giving off, in my opinion, like trying to make him seem like he's this reformed again, helping with programs and things of that nature. But it isn't what they want.
And there's some other really odd twists and turns that came about through this case, that the only reason this one is pertinent, and I will lay it out there, is his original defense attorney had a paralegal he was married to. So the attorney and the paralegal are married. Within 5 years after getting the second conviction, she divorced her attorney husband and married this perpetrator in the clink. And they are still married to this day. She works for a very large medical facility who I happened to doctor with over the years. At the last hearing almost 8 months ago, she said something that sparked me. Wait, that didn't happen till after he was convicted. How do you know that about me? And I actually was able to prove that she had been digging in my medical records illegally. That's how bad this has gotten for me.
So now not only he is re-victimizing his victims, but the wife, his current wife, who was married to his defense attorney, is now helping him re-victimize his victims on the outside.
Correct. And I was very fortunate because when I went public, I was reached out to and put in contact with a very incredible woman. And I won't say her name because I have not been able to reach her for several years. But she was an amazing advocate. She'd been through her own personal hell and then some with the South Dakota, Minnehaha County justice system. And her and I paired up and we were able to get what's called SAVIN in place and a victims' rights fund that did not exist before this happened. And now SAVIN notifies a victim every time that person leaves. So I was never told that he was going out of the facility to a woman's facility to talk. I am now notified every time that sucker steps one toe outside the fence. I am immediately notified in 3 different ways.
That's wonderful, though. And it's sad that that even has to happen because of what he has done. But I'm so proud of you for helping get that set up.
Thank you. The other lady was spearheading it, and I added my 25 cents and pushed hard.
You should be so proud of that, though. That
yeah. And like I said, there was no victims fund in South Dakota at the time, and this would have been in 1994. There was no victims fund. So when I had to leave my job because I couldn't even just get out of my house, I had to deal with it. I had to figure it out. And at 17 to be trying to figure it out, that's tough. That's tough.
Absolutely.
Now that doesn't have to be the same way for other victims. There's a fund that's available for them. And I finally got to take use of that fund because when this woman, his wife, when I was able to prove within a couple weeks that she had been digging in my medical records, and that meant she had my personal information, where I live, my phone number, who my emergency contact is, where they live, their phone number, that they were putting me in a shitty spot, and that it's too late. You can't fix it unless I move. I need a security system on my house again. And they didn't even balk at it. They confirmed who I was by calling the DOJ and Department of Justice and pulled up my information out of SAVIN, matched it, and said, "What do you want? What do you need? Let's do it." And they supplied me with a full security system for my house, including extra cameras. So those kind of things don't fix the damage done.
No.
But at least I don't have to sleep curled up in a ball in my closet because somebody pulled up out front and I don't know who it is.
Absolutely. Would you like to share his name? And
oh my goodness, Philip. Philip Don, Don Steele. And in recent years, he has gone back to his tribal name, which is Yellowbird.
Would you like me to show his sex registry picture?
Absolutely.
Okay. I'm gonna put you full screen. Just stay right there. I'm just gonna flip this off my phone right quick. This is Philip Donald Steele. He is a tribal member. This did happen on tribal land. that is part, like, his family is well connected and known in the area.
Very.
Yeah, this is the gentleman. He is on the sex offender registry, of course, but again, that is his picture, just to make sure he gets the,
The coverage he deserves.
yeah.
And just so you know, he now has white long hair and he pulls it back in a ponytail.
Oh, and he was given 114 years because he's a monster.
And
monsters-
after 30, and it wasn't even 30, it was 27 years. No, 25. I'm sorry. Because this will be my 5th year that I've been doing this. On his 25th year, he was able and eligible to apply for parole every 8 months going forward. And this is after the warden, who was the warden when he was convicted. This man is no longer the warden. Please don't go after him. He actually made a very clear statement on the front page of a newspaper stating, this is one bad, bad man.
Mm.
And yet they're considering every 8 months letting him out.
It's just unbelievable what he's been allowed to do. And again, that hearing is coming up, just for those of you coming in late. The hearing is coming up on April 16th. He is seeking parole again. His current wife is helping re-victimize the victims from the outside. This is something that the victims continually have to go through. If you or anybody are in the South Dakota area that could have been a victim of his, knows anybody, please share this out. We really know that there is other victims of this monster out there. He needs to be known for what he is, and these victims need to stop being re-victimized by the system. They're being failed by the justice system.
Absolutely. And if you're a victim of his, if you're a victim at all, I don't want you to make yourself uncomfortable. I don't want you to reach out. I want you to stay where you feel safe. But if you're looking for your voice to be heard finally, I will hook you up. I don't care what state you're in. I don't care if I have to follow your personal case as well as my own. Everyone's voice needs to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
It took the other victim 20 years to reach out to me. But when she did, you have no idea what a force we are to be reckoned with when we go in there together. And she and I both believed, I honestly believe it to my core, there are more victims of his out there.
Absolutely.
And if you need your voice heard and you're ready, you come find us. We will hook you up and get your voice heard.
And again, the pinned link is their Facebook group. Please join them. We are going to try to elevate their voices once again and get the victims' voices heard, and anything we can do to support.
So because I can't see chat, do you have questions there, Becky?
Let me go through, and you've done so good. I just want to say how proud of you I am.
Oh, thank you. I feel like I'm kind of a little bit all over the place.
No, you're doing excellent. You guys, if you have questions, please put them in the chat. I did see, is he someone important or related to somebody important?
So he is not someone important, except for that if you actually scan the Rapid City, and you have to be a member, you have to pay to get all these back issues, because we're dealing with the 90s and the late 80s here.
Mm.
But on newspapers.com, it's a great source for all archived things that have been scanned in that were important at the time, but not important enough to make live on the internet. Oh, excuse me. So what they do is they scan in important things over the years backwards in time. You will find all of the documentation you need on this case, or want, probably more than you want.
Yeah.
Um,
A lot.
yeah, but he was actually looked at for like, I think it was 11 years, might have been 12, but I'm safe in saying 11. After Jane Doe, the lady who contacted me several years later, after she was raped, he was looked at for every sexual assault, abuse, molestation within the entire tribal land. Every time someone was making a report, the cops went to his house. His mother worked at the sheriff's department.
Mm.
That's the connection that makes some of these things stay bottled up. It's why a lot of people don't want to come forward. She was a very um, higher up elder. Her family is very higher up elder. They assume that when he escaped right outside of the tribal lands, and they assume that he had help. Obviously, to get to Denver, he would have had to have had help.
Yeah.
Um, not let alone get the cuffs and the shackles off after crawling out the window. So there's a lot to it that happened in the background that you kind of just have to fit the pieces together, unfortunately.
Yeah. And they try there, like I said earlier, too, there's certain articles that have tried to paint him in uh, like the model prisoners light and stuff for these programs of drugs and alcohol that he's trying to help within the prisons. And it's just another, in my opinion, attempt of making what he's done to the victims. It kind of lessens that, in my opinion, of what they're attempting to do when they continue to use the system and all of the failures of the justice system to re-victimize his victims. And then you have people that are somehow connected supporters of his that are willing to come out and do stuff like that to smear the victims even more. It's really disheartening. It is absolutely unsettling, to say the least, of how many people have attempted to help him smear the victims.
Absolutely. And the Sun Tribune, if you look that up online, you can see what we're talking about. It's very clear that they are a very um, biased publication, in the respect that they don't even tell you what he was put away for, or
Yeah.
that he escaped, or that he had been arrested something like 27 times before I got him into prison. Um, they don't tell you that he had literally walked out of a tribal jail and escaped 10, 15 years prior to me running across him.
Yeah.
There's just a lot that they don't want you to know, but they're all too happy to jump up and down and try to get him released by highlighting the very few things that he has done that might have had a good impact. And I would bet if we go to those women that were in his quote unquote class, I would bet you that none of them are out free and not using anymore. I would highly doubt it, because you cannot you cannot fool a fool.
Right.
I mean, it's just not. I'm sorry, but it's not in this guy to do right. It never has been, unfortunately. And I would love to say that after all this time, I can see that he's trying really hard. But if you could hear and see the things he says in these parole hearings, you would understand why that's not the case.
And he gets to relive that every 8 months too.
Oh, I'm sure. Um, I'm confident that he enjoys these hearings every 8 months because he gets to watch the he gets to watch the blood drain out of now 2 victims' faces.
Right.
And I will tell you that the very first parole hearing that the other lady came to with me, we got to see his face go white. And he stumbled and stammered so bad that his wife actually jumped in to speak for him. It was a shock. I don't think he ever thought he'd have to face her ever again. He still remembers her at 7 years old.
That's just terrifying. Neither one of you and any of his other victims deserved anything that happened to you. All of you are so incredibly strong and so incredibly brave.
Well, so are you to tackle this kind of an issue.
Well,
You're very brave.
This needs to be highlighted. It needs to be talked about. It needs to be known that the justice system continues to fail victims, and the justice system in essence is re-victimizing the victims on behalf of the offenders a lot of times. And that's not how it's set up, but that's what continues to happen. You should not have to be facing this man every 8 months. This happened in 1992, and they gave him 114 years for a reason. Some people cannot be reformed.
Well, and that is one of the highlights that I was able to get in at the last hearing when he was, every time he comes in, he finds a new class that he's taken, a new something that he's done that makes him more eligible for parole, you know. And I told him at the last parole hearing, the first judge gave him 100 years. And that was not based on an escape. That was not based on anything, because we were not able to charge him as a habitual offender at that time. It was only based on the sole facts of the awful thing he put me through and what I endured to get back home. That's got to tell you something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't know whether it's what I say or what the other lady says, or whether it's a combination, or if these people on the panel go, wait, I remember that case. Oh my God, that was horrific. I don't know what it is that they ultimately say no, but I'm constantly going into each new hearing and wondering, is it the same board members? Are they going to remember?
Yeah.
Do I have to exploit myself again to remind you how awful this was and why it became a training in the DOC for South Dakota? They still use it as a training mechanism today. I mean, do I have to remind you how awful this was and why you don't want him living next door to you or someone you know?
Absolutely. We got some. Do you want to finish? There is a few more questions I can ask you.
Yeah, sure. No,
Okay.
that's great.
Accounting by Day says, has Chapt filed a complaint with her employer for the HIPAA violation?
Actually, it's not my employer's fault. I'm allowed. I how can I say this without outing myself? I have a good job. It's not my employer's violation. It's solely mine. She violated my HIPAA by digging into she got into a computer at work and pulled me up. That's how she got my medical information, because she works for the large medical company that I doctor with.
Does she still work there?
Yes, she does.
How
But they demoted her. She now works in housekeeping only, and she has no access to computers at all. But it's too late. She already has my home address, my phone number, my emergency contact, their address, their phone number. I mean, it's too late, but it is what it is. Um, but no, she still has a job. She was just highly demoted. Um, but it's not my work's fault. Absolutely not. And my work does not make me divulge anything. I work in a division of work that if I just told them I needed the day off and it's for court and this is why, they would be much more apt to think we need to dig into her.
Right.
Because a lot of people come to my line of work and they're not exactly free of a lot of skeletons.
Right.
Some of them carry the whole mortuary on their back and still make it through the door. Okay. So for me to do that, I feel disingenuous. I actually sat my boss down recently and said, okay, this is what's going on. I was raped 32 years ago. I went public. This asshole's up for parole on April 16th. I'm going to need that day off. I'm really sorry. And my boss looked at me and he said, you're really handling this well. Do you need a week off? Are you going to be okay? He was fabulous. It is not, no, it's not my work. I promise you, my work is very good to me about, they're very good to everybody, to be honest with you, if they need personal time off. But it's all, the HIPAA violation comes from her, unfortunately.
Yeah, and she is absolutely. Do you know? I saw it earlier, and hold on, I might be able to find it. The tribe that he's a part of, off the top of your head.
I've been told 3 different tribes, so I believe his family has footing, specifically down in. I know his family has footing specifically down in the Rapid City area. He also has some affiliation to a tribe in Mattress, Oregon, just north of there. And then he has affiliation with, I want to say it's Turtle Mountain, but I can't be sure on that last one. Excuse me again. Sorry, I ate before we did this live. My bad.
You're good.
But the actual name of the tribe that he comes from or where his roots really lie, no. And I'll be honest with you, I gave up trying to find out, because once I found out who his mom was and the positions that she held, I felt like that was a dead end road for me to find any kind of solace.
Yeah. He goes by Yellow Bird, just for those in the chat.
Yeah.
Philip Yellow Bird too is on. It just says on his DOC stuff. It just says American Indian, Alaska Native. I know. I think the Native Son quoted what tribe he's from. I'll find out, and then I'll let you guys know what I find out.
Yeah, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
There were points over the years that I really dug in my heels and I really followed every move that the Department of Justice was doing with him and tried to be in opposition and why, to keep people safe. Mm-hmm. And then there were years that I went, you know what? If it's a choice between raising my son in this kind of chaos or raising him to try to have an open mind, then I choose raising him with an open mind.
Lakota. He's Lakota.
Okay.
That's what.
Is that the Native Son?
Yeah, that's what the Native Son reports, is that he's Lakota.
Yeah. I would say that they would be one of the most knowledgeable.
Well, I don't know about that because I also say he's a model prisoner. So there.
Well, I can dispute that. I have a record of every write-up he's ever had, and I have no problem busting that puppy out when I need to.
Absolutely. Let me continue to go down and see if there's other questions. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about? Just a reminder, you guys, we're trying to get the word out because we know there's other victims. The victims continue to be re-victimized by the justice system every 8 months for parole hearings for a gentleman who is a habitual offender, a multi-time sex offender, a horrific rapist. Let's call it what it is. He's a monster. And he continues to use the court system to re-victimize his victims. And as you heard Chapt talk about, when he had an opportunity to take off, he escaped when he was furloughed for a funeral, and he went on the run for 2 years. And during those 2 years that he was out of jail, he was tormenting the victims over and over again by calling and using the media to re-victimize his victims. And now the justice system is being weaponized to re-victimize the victims of his horrific crimes. I don't want anybody to let that fail them. So this is a real big call for action of if there is other victims in South Dakota, if you have family in South Dakota, anybody that might have known him, might know of him, please get the word out. Please join their Facebook group. They have an incredible space that they've created to help each other and stand with survivors. And Chapt is an incredible human being. I am so thankful that I've gotten to know her because of YouTube, but her story is going to change lives too. It already has. They were able to implement Savin because of her and other cases. So anything that we can do, we're going to try to continue to highlight their voices. Sorry, Chapt, there's my long spiel.
Oh, you're going to make me cry. Thank you. You're very sweet.
You're an incredible, like anybody, as over time, as you guys get to know her, you'll understand that what she has done for victims by taking her voice right away. I mean, in 1992, she was not going to be silent and let him win. And if you know the temperature in the 90s, that was not typical for somebody to come out and be public and open about it. So this is so incredible. And her and Amethyst connecting too has been an incredible thing. So let me look through and see if there's any more.
Okay.
Go ahead and say anything you would like to talk about, anything.
Well, I'm not a huge YouTuber, but I follow a few channels, and yours happens to be one of them, all the way back to the ding dong phone call. And it's an opportunity for all of us to stand together. And the fact that you have opened up your channel for victims, survivors, that's a huge bite to take. And that's really amazing. And I can't thank you enough.
Well, it's one of those things that is so forgotten. I think we've talked about it a lot recently. You know, we see so often in these horrific true crime, these crime stories, the offenders are highlighted. The offenders are, we really focus on what caused them to do the crime instead of what this has done to the victims, survivors' lives for 30 plus years. This isn't something that just goes away. And then when you think you're kind of handling it, they shouldn't get parole, they've been sentenced, you can go through and start the healing process. Then they weaponize the court system, and our justice system, as flawed as it is, allows that to happen. And it just needs to be highlighted. Victim-centered discussions need to happen because unfortunately, 1 in 3, 1 in 4 are victims.
And that's really scary. I mean, it really is. And, I know that over the years, the climate has changed around rape victims, sexual assault victims. And I'm glad to see some of that change come, but our justice system really needs to catch up.
Does the wife have a criminal past?
She does not.
Yeah, she was married to his attorney, you guys. Like, this is no joke. Like, I can't even understand that mindset. Probably don't want to, but
Well, and I know I somewhat shared behind the scenes that I'm not sure whether to hate this lady because of what she's continued to do to make me feel uncomfortable and scared at times, or whether I should feel sorry for her that she's not smart enough to realize she deserves better. I'm not sure.
absolutely. Mary, to answer your question, are the hearings recorded? The parole hearings are recorded. It has been a really hard task for the victims to even get these recordings. As of right now, they have not gotten those recordings. Is that correct, Chapt?
Correct. So I can petition the Department of Justice or Department of Corrections, depending on what state you live in. It's sometimes called one or the other. Um, I can actually petition to get those, and I have wanted those more more for my own research benefit, so that going into the next one, I can actually have an excerpt to show that he's lying. He's doing a double take. Um, I'm not even able to get my hands on them. They state that while this is um, a common practice to air them and whatever, South Dakota has decided that any victims that were originally underage, those parole hearings will never go public.
Mm-hmm.
And I was underage, the first lady was underage, and the perpetrator was underage in her case. So I will never be able to get my hands on those for years to come, I'm afraid.
You've got so much support in the chat. It says, one of them says, it's nice to hear her laugh. She's not one bit bothered nor feels defeated or threatened, just fights for justice on victims' behalf. I commend you, Chapt, for this, truly.
Oh, thank you very much. I honestly find my strength in helping someone else. I always have. And it's kind of a weird twist of, I don't know, fate in its own way. But I truly find that, like when the other lady reached out to me, I mean, the last thing I was worried about was me. I wanted to help her get her voice heard, because at 7 years old, if you know, her voice was never heard.
Yeah.
And she needed that for her. And, and when I talked to other victims, I mean, I talked to, I think it was like 110, 112 high schools after I went public about the fact that we might be small town USA and you might be taught to help and trust everybody, but this is why you just can't anymore. And then I also went at it from the perspective of rape can happen to anybody. And this is what you need to do to keep yourself safe. And if you've been there, I'm someone safe you can reach out to. No one has to know. And I still have those letters, excuse me, written from the kids that I talked to. I have them tucked away upstairs in my junk room. I still have the transcripts from both cases that I went through. I have every newspaper clipping. They did a 2-hour scheduled live just on my story on KSFY. No, it was KELO. It was KELO that did it years ago, about trying to navigate the system and your feelings and emotions at the same time. And, not everybody can come to the point where they go, yeah, don't worry about me, just go get that fucker. Not everybody gets to that point. Some people just can't.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm not just speaking for me, I'm speaking for everyone who can't.
Yeah, you do a hell of a job. Well, and those of you, I've gotten to know Chapt over the phone, and I can pick up the phone and call her, and she's such an incredibly kind spirit. She is a fierce fighter, a fierce fierce survivor, but she provides this space for anybody. And it's just incredible because there's just this. He picked, let me put it this way, he picked the wrong one because she will never lay down and just, and I hate to even say it like that, but she is not about to just let these continue to happen, and not just for herself. She fights so much for other victims, survivors, fighters. And we talked about this yesterday too when we were on the phone. It's going to take people getting fed up with our systems being so broken that victims are re-victimized over and over again. Change has to happen. Victims cannot keep going through this over and over again. I'm looking through the comments to see if there's any other.
Okay. Well, I do want to take a minute because I can't see chat, but I want to tell everyone who's here that I appreciate you coming to hear my story and to empathize with other victims. That means a whole lot, honestly. And to think that I'm some Billy badass, I am at moments. But I also have my moments where I curl up in my closet and hide. And knowing that and supporting that, as well as the Billy badass, thank you. I mean that.
You're human. These events change and molds. You were a child. You were a child that has had to navigate a system that's not friendly to victims. It's not victim-centered, and you've had to navigate this. How could you not be two different people? Like, have two different sides. You have the fierce fighter side, but then you have this has affected your life in every facet.
Well, it has. I mean, I can honestly tell you that prior to this happening, I would run at age 14. I'd grab my dog and run down the railroad tracks 2 miles in the middle of the night and never even think about it. And now I'm constantly thinking about safety, and fits in really well with my job, but but it's but I'm looking at safety from a really different view. And I still help people, and probably shouldn't, but I've been known to stop on the side of the road with someone with a flat tire and help them. But I'm very selective about it. I don't stop for everybody anymore. And I don't allow myself to be in situations that feel off. If it feels off at all, trust your gut instinct. Turn around and go somewhere else. That's the biggest thing I can tell you. There was twice that night that I can openly admit during the drive that had something been open, I would have stopped because it didn't feel right. Oh, just a couple more blocks, just a couple more blocks. And so nothing's open in the middle of the night. We're talking 2 o'clock in the morning. I had to keep going or risk having a battle in the car. And at the time, I thought, no, you're psyching yourself out. You're being stupid. You're, all the things you tell yourself to calm yourself down. Realistically, if you're feeling it in your gut, it's wrong. Turn around. Have that battle in the car, because they are less likely to be able to hurt you in the car than they are when they get you somewhere. Have the battle in the car if you can.
Yeah, that's.
And drive a 5-speed. Everybody drive 5-speed, man. If you're alone and you're a woman, drive 5-speed. I'll teach you how. You hit me up. I'll come to you.
That's the first vehicle I learned how to drive, was the stick shift.
Me too, but so many people don't anymore.
I know. Most people don't know how to drive it, but it's good that I'm glad that at least that semi prevented what
could have happened.
Yeah, it's bad enough what did happen, but anything proceeding beyond that, like it is, yeah.
Absolutely. And, you know, I forced my kid, who hated me for probably a year, to learn to drive a manual. And to this day, he still brings it up off and on about how horrible that was. But there's no reason. Told him, I said, look at it this way. If your friends are all drunk, nobody can steal your car.
That's true. That's very true. Did you guys have any other questions? I don't want to keep Chapt here super long. I'm sure there will be some follow-up that we can do. I'm going to clip this down some and put it on platforms and really, you know, call to action for other victims if there is anybody that would like to speak, or, you know, unfortunately in these situations, we know that the likelihood of other victims is very, very high. He needs to be known for what he is. He's an absolute monster. Sometimes awareness is all we can do, and highlighting victims' voices. We're going to continue to do that over and over again. It's ironic that, well, I don't know if ironic's the word, Amethyst Monster and Chapt's Monster will be having hearings on the same day coming up in April. How this all is full circle. So the Islanders, we look forward to having you stand with us for these two amazing, strong women in the upcoming weeks. We're going to continue to try and do everything we possibly can. If anybody has any questions, Chapt is an amazing advocate and an amazing advocate. So,
oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yes, of course. You women have taught me so much about myself. It's been an interesting journey. You know, you have really been so good for not just me, but Am too. I know that like you've helped us learn stuff that we didn't even know would come up in her parole hearing and stuff. So this is kind of how this kind of goes, is, you know, one adds more knowledge and experience, and everything is a little different here and there, but this is what we can do to help highlight victims and their stories, and we will continue to do it. So
I love that. And from every victim, every survivor, every woman that feels they can't speak up yet, thank you. It's amazing how much it means to be able to just go listen in your chatter in the bushes to someone else be brave for you, if that makes sense.
mm-hmm.
And know that it's safe. That means a lot. And I could probably send you like some really cool baskets for the next 15 years and not thank you enough. But your first one's going to be a baseball bat and a golf club for inside, okay?
That's the funniest thing, and guess where it's sitting? Right up there still.
I'm sorry. I had to do it. I had to do it.
That's so funny though, because it's so true. What she's referencing to is we were on the phone yesterday and I was telling her, I was like, I laid in bed last night and sat there and was thinking to myself, I am such a dumbass. I have a baseball bat and a golf club on the other side of the slider headed out to the pool. There's a baseball bat and a golf club. And I was like, what am I going to do if there's an intruder? Open the slider and say, can you hand me that baseball bat right there? Like, what am I doing? They're my arsenal for scorpions, but how ridiculous. And all of a sudden, just out of the blue, it kept me up the other night. And I was thinking about it. Anyways, that's really don't pull it, Becky. If you guys don't have any other questions, I want it to be rewatched. I want people to rewatch this and hear your words. And if you guys have questions, like I said, feel free to ask them in the chat. I can connect you. Anybody that wants to connect to Chapt, you can feel free to, you know, comment back and forth. I will make sure that she sees comments, anything of that nature. Anything else? Please join the Facebook group. We're going to continue to advocate. You'll hear more. If you guys, like I said, have questions, please let us know. We've got to continue advocating for change in the justice system to stop failing these victims.
And if everybody could, mark April 16th and on your way into work, just send a few good vibes out there.
Yes, all the vibes. We will do something. We will do stuff leading up to those days so we can rally the troops and get everybody in the, because we're going to need all the good positive vibes that day for both of you. So
all right, well, thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone being here.
thank you for your bravery and your nonstop advocacy for victims.
All right, dear, we'll talk soon.
Okay. Do you know? Oh, look at her, she even knows how to leave. She is like skilled at this. She says she doesn't know what she's doing. She did great. Thank you all once again for being here and allowing these women, these incredibly strong, brave women, the space to tell their stories and to really support each other. I know there's many more in the comment section, and some of you that are not at the time and space that you might not ever want to talk about your story, and that's okay too. But the fact that you continue to show up for these women, and we call them victims because unfortunately they are victims of horrific crimes, but they're not identified as victims. These women are so much more than what has happened to them. They are incredibly fierce advocates for other victims, and I know that these women together over time, change will happen. Someday somebody will listen to us, and I appreciate all of you guys for being here and giving them the space to tell their stories. It's so important. Victims telling their stories and hearing their truth is so important. These are fighters. These are survivors. They are not the crimes that happened to them. They were innocent. Most of them were children, young adults. Even if you're old, it doesn't matter your age. You're not to blame. They are absolute survivors. Yep. Absolutely. With that said, I'm going to get off here for this one. I might be back later. Maybe we'll do some lighthearted stuff later, but I appreciate you all for joining us today and giving us the space to discuss this. We have more coming up. Maybe I'll get Am and Chapt on a live together. That might be a little chaotic because we might just be giggling about random things, but those two women are incredible. So I hope you guys all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you guys later. Thanks again. And once again, thank you, Chapt, for trusting me to even come up and talk to me. Like, I'm honored to stand beside all of you in this journey. Good night, y'all. If I can figure out how to get my mouse to work.